know, in this day and age, there are a lot of people that are not getting along. A lot of protesters that are yelling at other protesters, and it's getting ugly, right? We had a pro-police march, I guess you could say. Blue Lives Matter, you can call it that. People that gathered in a city of Fallon, Nevada, which in my understanding is about 30 to 45 minutes outside of Reno. While you had that going on the other side, you had a Black Lives Matter protest. So obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but there are some people within those two protests that were clashing a little bit. It wasn't violent, but they were clashing. Let's just say they were not getting along. And then all of a sudden came along the Ku Klux Klan. That's right. The Ku Klux Klan shows up, and it was a very meaningful moment because we can disagree but agree on really important things like the Ku Klux Klan. Both sides were able to push the Ku Klux Klan out, and they kind of hugged it out, and it's kind of a beautiful story if you ask me. And the guy joining us right now was a part of that pro-police protest. His name is Max Ryan. He was there, and he's here to tell that story. Max, I appreciate you coming on. How are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing good, Max. So this is really an interesting story, and it had a very good ending. I think that's fair to say. Can you tell us from the beginning? Just walk us through what exactly happened.
Yeah. So Fallon is a small bedroom community to Reno, Nevada. It's about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Reno. And we heard tell about a week prior to the incident that Black Lives Matter was forming a protest in the rural areas, specifically Fallon, Nevada. Some of the citizens in Fallon were a little concerned with some of the things they had seen on the media, how some of these peaceful protests have turned into riots. And so the neighboring communities and some of the citizens in Fallon decided that we were going to do our own peaceful protests at the same time for Blue Lives Matter and also voice our Second Amendment right to openly bear arms in the state of Nevada. So we showed up across the street from the Black Lives Matters protest. The first little bit of time, it was a lot of chanting back and forth across the main street. There were 3 or 4 lanes separating us. And I would say about an hour and a half into it, a couple of the Black Lives Matters members actually crossed the street and came on to what was perceived our side of the street. And they knelt down in front of me. And one of them was actually holding a sign referring to police officers as pigs. So as a comment, I stepped up behind him and I said, "What exactly are you protesting?" And he said, "Well, I'm protesting peace." And I said, "Well, if you're protesting peace, why don't you give me a hug?" And he turned around and him and I started hugging each other. And next thing I know, the entire Black Lives Matter movement had moved over to our side of the street. And we were engaging each other in debate. And through the debates, we realized pretty quickly that we actually agree on a lot of the issues at hand. We disagree on a few, but most of the issues at hand we agreed on. Part of the issues that we discussed was lack of education. Why the American public feels that they have to fight each other on some of these issues.
Hey, Max, I'm sorry to interrupt you because I want you to continue and then talk about the Klan arriving. Yep. But I want to give you a lot of credit for something because you said something very profound what happened there. So you have you're protesting because you're saying police lives matter. By the way, I agree with you, just as I agree with the Black Lives Matter movement as a whole. But you have someone kneeling in front of you that is depicting a police officer as a pig, which, by the way, I completely disagree with. I think it's disgusting. But with that being said, you could have handled it much differently. If you were an ignorant person, which clearly you're not, you could have yelled obscenities at that person, maybe even something racist, God forbid. It could have gotten really bad. Instead, you took the opposite approach, and you said, well, if you're protesting for peace, I want peace as well. Give me a hug. And I want to give you a lot of credit for that because I wish the people in society were more like you. Because basically what I'm trying to say is congratulations, because you could have handled that a very different way, and who knows how it would have ended. And I just want to give you accolades for that because it sounds to me like you started the process of something really nice that was an actual conversation. Doesn't mean you have to agree on everything. But I think that's so important to point that out because I think there's too many people in society today when they're protesting, against or for something, they just don't know how to communicate with others. So I want to congratulate you for doing that. That's important.
Thank you. Yeah, I've preached since this started, just to my family and friends that at some point you get to make a decision on whether or not you want to be part of something negative or something positive, and it's very important to me that if I'm going to be part of something outside of my own home or my own family beliefs, that it's a positive thing. So
Sure.
You're right. I at that moment I had a choice to make, and I was pretty tacked out. I probably looked like something out of a SWAT movie. I'm prior military, so I have quite a bit of gear. And
thank you for your service.
You're very welcome. I went there very actively sporting my gear, and you're right. It could have went differently. And it could have went differently for him too. He made the choice to stand up and actually give me the hug. So it could have went different on both sides of that.
And I thought it was important to note that. Okay, so you guys are having conversation. Black Lives Matter people come over. Yep.
Actually, we're having a debate, and it was not. I wouldn't say heated per se, but it was definitely emotional. There was a lot of people there that we obviously feel very strongly in our beliefs, as do they. There was a few times where it got a little elevated, voices raised a little bit. We reeled each other in pretty well. And we actually decided through the conversations that we agreed to disagree on a few topics, and we agreed on, I would say, probably 85% of the topics.
That's really nice to hear. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
We agreed that the American people shouldn't be fighting each other.
Sure.
That we should be going after what's causing the diversity.
Absolutely. You're not going to agree on everything, but okay, so you guys are having a good debate, good discussion. I'm glad that you guys are able to find a lot of common ground. Now let's take it to the next level. When do you guys actually see the KKK?
Well, and that is actually in just a couple minutes. But the next level was when they said they came in peace, I asked them why they brought signs calling us names and bigotry. When I brought that to their attention, they actually removed their signs. And in return, they asked me to lay down my firearm. And so they took down the signs calling cops names. They took down the signs that were antagonistic. And in return, I laid down my firearm.
Well, you know what?
That was actually the biggest turning point of the thing, minus running off the KKK. They put down their signs. We stopped chanting obscenities at each other. We actually started intermingling, and both crowds were one-on-one conversations, group conversations. It really went really well. I took my firearms and everything I came tacked with, and I put them in my truck along with a couple other members of my party did. Some of us did stay armed. And we were intermingling on their side. The rally was really coming to an end. We were all, hugging it out, saying our goodbyes, agreeing to disagree, applauding people that we did agree with. And next thing we know, there's a couple individuals coming down the street in what appeared to be partial KKK.
All right, hang on. Let me stop you. Can I just stop you right there for a second? I don't mean to laugh. This is so ridiculous. You guys have a nice protest. It seems like it went very well. What is going through your mind and some of the minds of the African Americans that were there when all of a sudden you look down the road and you see people dressed up in Klan outfits? I mean, what is going through your mind?
My immediate thought was this was going really good, and this is potentially going to be very bad.
Right.
We actually have quite a bit of armed people here, and we have some quite a for the size of the town, quite a large crowd of African American people. The minute they saw them, they're immediately emotional. The guys immediately started yelling and screaming. A lot of the girls in the crowd actually immediately burst into tears. A couple of our armed citizens that showed up on my side of the movement actually ran to where they were coming from, along with a few police officers. They didn't make it within 50 feet of the actual crowd. Our armed citizens and our police officers did a very good job at immediately turning them around and getting them out of there, as well as some of the Black Movement protesters. They all pretty much formed a barricade and wouldn't let him anywhere near the actual gathering. So it ended up turning out to be a really good day and a very peaceful for both parties.
How did you know that the members were actually members of the Klan? What were they wearing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How were you able to identify the Ku Klux Klan? What were they wearing exactly?
Well, the Black Lives Matter people were actually in regular civilian attire. Some of our people were too. Most of the people that were on our side were in military gear, flak vests, AR-15s, 9mm on their hips, stuff like that. So my party was pretty easily distinguishable. The Black
We're talking about the Klan.
No, I'm talking about the Klan.
Oh, they were wearing the white Ku Klux Klan hats.
Were they? So we heard reports. We heard reports that they also had Trump signs. Can you verify that?
Yeah, they had Trump flags. They had Ku Klux Klan hats, and they were sporting Trump 2020 flags.
So I don't know if you're a Donald Trump supporter or not, but does that offend you when you see somebody that has that much hatred in their body that they would show up to a rally when they know there's going to be a bunch of minorities there wearing Ku Klux Klan outfits, making it political and showing their support for Donald Trump? I don't know what political affiliation you're from or even if you're a Trump supporter, but I would imagine that would bother anybody that's a Trump supporter.
Yeah, whether you're a Trump supporter or not, I think the message that they were trying to send is offensive to anybody that was there. They're promoting hate, racism, and everything that feeds it. So whether you're a Trump supporter or not, you take the flags out of the equation. The bottom line is they were trying to take a peaceful protest and turn it into something more than that. And that's offensive to anybody who's there, who's actually trying to keep it peaceful and have an open mind and understand each other.
Agreed. Okay, so Max, I'm curious now. Since we got past the KKK situation, which made national news. And by the way, I'm so glad that they were turned away, and both you and the Black Lives Matter people stepped up to the plate. I give you both credit for that. I'm just curious. What did you and the Black Lives Matter people disagree on? Can you get in depth? Because I'm curious.
It was kind of a little bit of what you were talking about a little bit earlier. The sign Black Lives Matter can be a little bit misleading. And so we were, one of the things that some of the people in my party were saying was that the statement Black Lives Matter in itself is racist. Because you're specifying a certain race, and they a lot of them tend to disagree with that. And I actually heard a good point of view on it that I'm not going to say it 100% changed my mind, but it made me think twice about it. And the leader of their movement, I can't pronounce her name, I apologize, but the leader of their movement, she actually pulled me aside and she's like, we're not preaching Black Lives Matter because Black lives are the only lives that matter. We're preaching Black Lives Matter because that's our stance today. That's what initiated us doing this. We believe that all lives matter too. And actually, the leader of their group actually posted something on Facebook the day of the protest, the morning prior, in support of police officers.
Good.
And,
I'm really glad to hear that. Yep.
Yeah. So they're not. It's not that they're against the police. They're against the brutality that they've witnessed through the media.
Exactly. And I just don't understand why so many people don't get that. I want to end by saying this, Max. To me, this is what protest should be all about. It shouldn't just be one side. You're going to have people that are going to agree and disagree, but it's about civil discourse, exactly what you did. You're a perfect example of that. You're not going to agree on everything, but have conversations. Now, if you're going to have a conversation with someone that's ignorant, you're not going to get anywhere. It sounds like there were, not to sound like Donald Trump, but it sounds like there were smart, good people on both sides of this issue. And I don't even know if you said it yourself. You guys agree on most of the things. So to me, this is exactly what a protest should be about. Having civil discourse, having intelligent conversations. Might not agree on everything, but you might be surprised that we agree on more things than we disagree on. Max, I want to commend you for that and being a stand-up guy and representing police officers in a very, very, very smart and respectful way. Max, thank you so much for coming on our show. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Max.
Absolutely. You gentlemen have a great afternoon.
Appreciate it. There you go. Max Ryan, really smart guy, showed a lot of intelligence, patience, and he said it. I give that Black Lives Matter protester credit, too. He got up. He gave this man a hug. And that's all it takes sometimes. If a protest of 1,000 people, one or two smart people that are willing to take that next step, maybe it's hugging an officer. Maybe it's hugging a protester. It sounds to me that that's all it takes sometimes. And I think we need more people like this man. We need more people like Max Ryan. It sounds to me like those are the Black Lives Matter protesters that I'm talking about. The majority of people in the Black Lives Matter movement, that's what I'm talking about. Those are good people. And you had good people that are supporting the police. You had good people that were supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And what did they do? They came together and they can all agree, and they did, that the Ku Klux Klan is nothing but a hate racist group. We need more protests like that. I see it when the Open Up Nevada rallies, a bunch of Trump signs. I see it in some of these Black Lives Matter protests where it might not be political, but there's so much hate. There's so much hate.
Open Up Nevada with Trump signs is not racist at all, Brian. And there's no hate attached to it at all.
Well, I've seen
now there is obviously.
I disagree with what you just said.
How could you agree with that?
Because
opening up Nevada,
I'll respond
wanting to get your job back, wanting to bring back the economy, and supporting Donald Trump is not. Now you're saying that anyone who supports Donald Trump
that's not what I said.
Is hateful, and that is what you said.
No, if you'll let me finish, I will explain to you what I'm trying to say here. There were some Confederate flags in some of those protests. There were people with guns dressed up as G.I. Joe that were very divisive. Okay, there are people at all of these rallies. There are some people that are very, very divisive, and they're just not intelligent people.
Brian, it's an open carry state, so if they have the ability to carry that firearm, that's okay. I did not know there was a Confederate flag. I never saw one myself.
There were members of the Boogaloo.
I did not see a Confederate flag at any Open Up Nevada rally at all.
There were rallies throughout the country. I'm not just talking about Nevada. And there is a group called the Boogaloos. Some of them were at one of those rallies in Nevada. It is a hate group. And it is important to call these types of people out. What I am trying to say is
they were called Igloo.
No, they're not Igloo. That's what Alaskans people live in.
No,
it's not an igloo.
No, they had Igloo it was a play on words in their group's title.
Yeah.
They were carrying an Igloo flag. The Igloo flag is associated with
the point I am trying to make, and you're getting defensive when it comes to some of these rallies.
I'm not getting defensive at all. I'm just saying you're comparing the Ku Klux Klan having Trump flags to Open Nevada having Trump flags.
Here's what I'm trying to say.
They're two totally different premises.
I don't think whether it's a different premise or not, my opinion still stands, and that is there are some bad people in some of these Trump rallies. There are some bad people in some of these BLM rallies. There are bad people on both sides of the aisle. And I'm not going to sit here and say that all of these Open Up Nevada rallies and all these Open Up the Country rallies, that they're all fine and dandy people like Donald Trump would like to lead you on to believe. There were bad people in some of those Trump rallies. There are bad people in some of the BLM rallies, period. There's no reason to debate or argue that.